I want to start from the question of Fortress Europe, because, of course, 2 weeks ago, we saw one of the bloodiest weeks in the history of Fortress Europe, where at least 880 people are known to have drowned in the Mediterranean. Another 14,000 were rescued. The majority of these, of course, refugees fleeing from the civil war in Syria, looking for a safe place to live. Over the last couple of years, we've seen this toll of deaths in the Mediterranean rising. In 2014, 3,500 people known to have died. In 2015, 3,700. This year, already, only halfway through the year, 2,800 people are known to have died. And these numbers are despite, of course, this year, the tightening up of borders, the deal with Turkey that came in a few weeks ago, attempting to stop anyone coming here at all, even those people, those refugees, who should have every right under humanitarian laws to come here and claim a safe place to live. And we know it's not that the EU can't afford to deal with refugees, because what is the EU doing? It's sending them back to Turkey and then beyond, hoping people will stay actually in the Middle East, in much poorer countries than ours and other places in the EU. And I think it's really important that we start from that perspective of the whole of the EU, because we don't have the right to just look at so-called British interests or just look at the situation for people here. We have to look at the EU in terms of its role as the enforcer of a murderous policy at its borders, which thrives actually on a racist ideology of the acceptable Europeans who are allowed this kind of limited free movement that we see inside of the EU, as against those non-acceptable people, the people from outside those arbitrary borders. And someone mentioned Gordon Brown's comments this morning. That's not a contradiction. That is absolutely mirroring the ideology of the European Union. And I'm not prepared to trade off, actually, between the lives of Europeans and the lives of people from beyond those borders. The EU, the Bosses Club, it wants to control migration to suit its needs, and it wants to drive down our wages and conditions and remove any other barriers that get in the way of making a profit. But it also wants to use racism to divide us, and this is what we are seeing across the EU at the moment. I say open the borders and let them in. Let's see those children that were discussed in Parliament, those children currently living in the horrendous conditions in Calais, let's see them here in Britain at school in September. That's why many of us are supporting the convoy to Calais this coming Saturday, to take solidarity out and to support those people and try and put a political argument to our government to open the borders. But also, it's not just about refugees, it's about migrant workers as well. Every worker should be paid a decent wage, whether born here or not. And this is something that all of us here, I think, tonight are campaigning over in terms of the workers' rights across the EU. Because it's not just in Greece or Spain or, Portugal or Ireland that the EU's policies are leading to the kind of horrendous conditions we're seeing for workers. And you don't have to go beyond the borders of Britain to see the way that migrant workers are already treated, within the EU. People will know of Mike Ashley, the boss of Sports Direct, who is currently at least facing some scrutiny over the horrendous conditions in his warehouses up in Derbyshire. I was talking to a socialist recently who has been part of working alongside other trade unionists, going out to the warehouses and trying to help organise among the migrant workers, vast majority of them from Eastern Europe. One of the things they're doing is offering free English lessons to help people be able to communicate and build and organise among wider groups of workers. One Polish-speaking trade unionist who was fighting for these, leafleting for these English classes, said to one Polish worker, do you want some free English classes? And the guy said to him in Polish, I don't need English classes, I already know enough English. He goes, oh yeah, what do you know? He goes, fuck Mike Ashley. This is the language that we have to be speaking. It's the language of international workers' solidarity. And I think that those who say that voting Leave will feed racism and nationalism need to take a look at Europe. And let's bear in mind that Jobbik, the far-right party in Hungary, has now changed its policy on the EU and supports it, because actually they can see that they could reform the EU to be even more racist and horrendous than it already is. I think we cannot fight racism and austerity by supporting a racist neoliberal bosses club. Arguing to defend the EU now and wait for a later date to fight it is only going to make it harder to fight it later on. This is not the way we might have chosen to get rid of David Cameron or to kick the Tories and divide them for years to come, but it's the opportunity we've been given, and I think we have to take it. No to Fortress Europe and no to austerity.
Thanks, Sally.